right, welcome to Talking Investing. I'm Tom, and as always, this is not financial advice. Today, I want to talk about Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners. This is a weekly edition, weekend update. Bitcoin had a big week. The Bitcoin miners had a big week. There's a lot to go through. We're going to go through all of our ordinary charts. I have a new chart that we haven't looked at before. In addition to that, I want to show you some information regarding the Bitcoin ETFs. Also, I want to take a look at an indicator that gets a lot of attention. We're coming up on 20,000 subscribers, so if you're new here or you have not yet subscribed, please consider subscribing to the channel. It does make a big difference. Also, we're shooting for 700 likes. So if you could do us a big favor and smash the like button. I also want to take this time to thank everybody. You guys have been hitting the like button. It's been making a giant difference for the videos and for the channel. So thanks a lot for that. Let's talk about Bitcoin. Okay, as always, the first chart we're going to look at is the week over week. So this is what the Bitcoin miners and Bitcoin did this week. This was an absolutely stellar week. This was a breakout week for Bitcoin. Now, we're hitting some resistance. We'll talk about that a little later, but a giant move to the upside, and the Bitcoin miners had a big reversal. We're going to take a look at a chart of about the last 5 or 6 weeks where the Bitcoin miners have been on a big downtrend. Well, that stopped this week, and really, it was the last 2 days of the week. So let's talk about what happened this week. In gold, you're going to see Bitcoin up 11%. So that's a giant 1 week move. So very strong week for Bitcoin. But if you take a look at the Bitcoin miners, other than BitDeer, which was up 3%, that's the only Bitcoin miner that lagged Bitcoin. If we go to the other side of this list, we had some gigantic movers. CleanSpark was up 68%. CleanSpark did report earnings. They also reported a lot of additional exahash that came online recently and is about to come online. So the market obviously liked that. There was a big move to the upside. Iris Energy, nobody really talked a lot about, but that was a gigantic move. 57% move up this week. GREE was up 40%. Marathon, which is the largest by market cap, Marathon was up 31% this week. Super strong week. RIOT was up just behind it, 30% this week. So you're going to see most of these Bitcoin miners were up between 20 and 30% on the week. These are very, very big moves. That's pretty much a 2x leverage for the vast majority of the Bitcoin miners versus Bitcoin. Some of them were 3 or 4 or 5. So very strong week. We've been talking about the fact that Bitcoin miners are lagging. We're going to take a look at that on the last chart, and it looks like maybe this has started to reverse. So one of the other things I want to talk about is a lot of people may feel like with this gigantic run up that you've missed your window of opportunity. I'm going to show you a few charts that may change your mind on that. This is the first one right here. This is the year-to-date chart. So we're about 6 weeks into the year, and you can see the majority of this chart is still in the red, which means almost all of the Bitcoin miners are still down year-to-date. In that same period of time, in gold, you'll see Bitcoin up 13%. The only Bitcoin miner that's outperforming Bitcoin so far this year is CleanSpark. And we just looked at CleanSpark had an unbelievable move to the upside this week. And if you notice, it just so happens it's up double what Bitcoin is up year to date. Nothing else is even close. Marathon, which is the largest Bitcoin miner, is up 2% year to date. DMG Blockchain, which is one of the nano-cap smallest Bitcoin miners, is even at 0%. Everything else is in the red, and you'll see consolidation here in the down 20 to 25 or 30% area. So most of these are still down dramatically. But I want to go just 2 days further back in time, 2 trading days. If we take a look at this chart, this is the 6.5 week period from December 27th. So really, December 27th, all the Bitcoin miners had a peak. That was their high for the year of 2023. So if we look at this chart, there's only one Bitcoin miner that has now passed that high from December 27th, and that is CleanSpark, and it's only up 4%. So in that same time, Bitcoin, as always in gold, is up 9%. So Bitcoin has had a nice run in this 6 week period. It just started to break out this week. We saw 11% of this move was this week. So it's actually up more this week than it is in this 6.5 weeks. Everything else is still deeply in the red. So you're going to see when we take those 2 extra trading days, the last 2 trading days of 2023, there's a grouping here of Bitcoin miners down between 20 and 25%, and then there's another big grouping down between 35 and 45%. So most of the Bitcoin miners are still way off of their highs from just 6.5 weeks ago. Iris Energy, even after being up 57% this week, they're still down 38% in the last 6.5 weeks. You're going to see at the bottom of the list, HUT is down 54%. They've had a series of not so great press releases and news surrounding them, so they are the lagger. Stronghold's down 50%. Gree, despite the fact they were up 40% this week, they're still down 43% in the last 6.5 weeks. Marathon's down 23%. Bitfarms is down 23%. Riot's down 22%. If you feel like you've missed your window of opportunity, and there has been a gigantic run-up, so I am by no means saying now is the time to FOMO in and, go all in on one day. None of this is financial advice. I just try to show you guys these charts in as many different ways as possible to kind of get a bigger picture look at what's going on, because on any one given day or 1 week, sentiment can change dramatically, and we just saw that happen this week. So is it possible we'll get a little bit of a pullback after a chart that was so green this week? That's possible. However, Bitcoin does look like it's at a point where it could break to the upside, and we may keep running. Either way, you'll see there's an awful lot of red left on these charts, so there is a lot of room potentially to the upside from here. And this is just to get to their local high from December of 2023. This is nowhere near their all-time highs. Even if we go further back, all the Bitcoin miners hit a local high in July of 2023. So that was really now about 6 or 7 months ago. Even in that period of time, while Bitcoin is up 58%, still more than half of the Bitcoin miners are down in the red. So you can see by studying these charts, there's an opportunity to potentially find some Bitcoin miners that are performing very well operationally that are still lagging with all these Bitcoin miners in the red. There's some big popular names in here. Riot's down 24% from their summer highs in the same period of time that Bitcoin is up 58%. Even some of these Bitcoin miners that are in the green are still lagging Bitcoin. Even on this chart, there's only one Bitcoin miner that's outperforming Bitcoin in this period, and that is CleanSpark. And most of that is this pretty serious move that they had up this week. I will show this chart as well, which is still 100% in the red. I know there are some of you that don't like this chart. If you don't like this chart, just ignore this segment. You can fast forward, but I think this is very meaningful, and I'll tell you why. Even though all of these companies have gone through dramatic changes, a lot of these companies, at least half of these companies, have significantly grown their business. Some of these companies are 5 or 10 times the size that they were when Bitcoin hit its all-time high, and that's what this chart is. This is measuring from November of 2021 until now. So you'll see Bitcoin's actually catching up. We're only 31% off of our all-time high for Bitcoin, which again was hit in November of 2021. But the next closest Bitcoin miner is CleanSpark, and that is still 41%. And then there's a gigantic drop-off. Most of these Bitcoin miners are down between 66 and all the way down to 98%. Now, some of these Bitcoin miners are in all likelihood never going to recover and never hit their all-time highs. It's my opinion, and again, this is not financial advice. I think there's a significant number of Bitcoin miners, somewhere between 6 and 9 of these Bitcoin miners will take out their previous all-time highs, and some of them will significantly take them out, in my opinion. So obviously, not financial advice, and I don't know the future, but that is why I look at this chart. When I look at a company, for instance, Marathon's a company that's still 71% off of its previous highs. And in my opinion, I think Marathon will take out its all-time high sometime in the next, 18 to 24 months. Now, obviously, that's going to depend on the price of Bitcoin. That's going to depend on Marathon's performance in that period of time. But there are others. Bitfarms is down 71%, Riot 69%. These are all companies that I think have strong performance, and they have a lot of potential move to the upside. I don't want to single out any company. I'm just showing you some of the larger companies and where they stand. And I don't want to belabor this chart, but if you do take a look at this chart, it's important to understand all these companies are still somewhere between in the red and deeply in the red. So again, this is now a fourth chart that shows there really is still a lot of potential to the upside. And I want to reiterate, that doesn't mean I'm advocating going all in right now. Obviously, none of this is financial advice, and I do think you have to be careful. Putting big chunks of money in after these companies just had a giant run-up may not be the best idea, so each of you will have your own individual investment plan. So I guess what I would say, and I say in every single one of these updates, is have a plan, stick to your plan, and everybody's investment plan is different. So it's very hard when you see these things running. There's temptation to deviate from your plan in either direction. So I always like to remind people, if you do have a plan, you should stick to your plan. And if you don't have a plan, you should probably make a plan, because at some point you do want to take profits on these companies. And a lot of people I know are already in that mode. And, if that's your plan, then that makes sense for you. Okay, I have a new chart that I want to bring to everybody. This is Bitcoin versus the major US indexes. In addition to that, I have Ethereum, gold, and silver on here. So I'm just going to track this for the year. Bitcoin has by far been the best performing asset over the last, really since its inception. It's up astronomically. Now, obviously in the crypto winter, that was not true. 2022 was a brutal year for Bitcoin. Conversely, 2023, we kind of moved into a crypto spring, and Bitcoin was up about 150%. It outperformed by far all the major indexes, gold, silver, all the commodities, Ethereum. So we're going to take a look at this year. Now, I don't know that Bitcoin, between Bitcoin and Ethereum, I know there's a lot of people that think Ethereum may have a bigger year. There's some catalysts potentially ahead. And obviously there's a whole cryptocurrency world. I just picked these two because they are by far the two largest cryptocurrencies. And then obviously the NASDAQ. So if we take a look at this just for a minute, you're going to see Bitcoin's up over 13% year to date, but Ethereum's having a good year, up 8%. It's worth noting the equity markets are doing very well, particularly the NASDAQ's up 6.5% already year to date. That's more than a lot of the large financial institutions thought they were going to do for the year this year. So sentiment was pretty bearish in Q4 of 2023 regarding 2024, but we have started out gangbusters this year. The NASDAQ up 6.5%, the S&P up over 5%, the Dow's up 2.5%. The only thing that continues to lag is the Russell 2000. My personal opinion is I think ultimately by the end of the year, the Russell 2000 will have passed the Dow, the S&P 500, and the NASDAQ. Again, that is just my personal opinion. It's not financial advice, but I think the Russell is long overdue. Conversely, gold is down 1% and silver's down almost 5%. Gold and silver really have been languishing at these price points for years and years now. I just don't see gigantic moves in these. But obviously, we're very early into the year, so this is something I'm hoping we can keep our eye on throughout the year and see what happens. So the two things I'm looking at most specifically here is Bitcoin and the Russell 2000. Those are the ones that I pay the closest attention to. And it will also be interesting to see if the NASDAQ, which is now at its all-time high, if it can continue to run from here. This chart's basically tracking every single day of inflows for the Bitcoin ETFs, inflows and outflows, I should say, for each of the different spot ETFs. And then there's a total column over here, so you'll see total inflow or outflow on any given day since the inception of the spot ETF. So January 11th, which was the first day of trading for the spot ETFs, remains the largest inflow of any day that we've had. $655 million flowed into the spot ETFs on that day. On Thursday of this week, $405 million of inflows came into the Bitcoin spot ETFs. That was the third best day the spot ETFs had ever had. So people were celebrating that, only to have the next day, Friday, February 9th, $541 million of inflows into the spot ETFs. So that is the second best day since the inception of the ETF. So the last 2 days for the spot ETFs were the second best and the fourth best day since they started. So I think we're seeing these starting to take effect. There was a period of time, if you look at this column right now, this is the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, and it's no longer a trust, it's now an ETF. So upon that conversion, they were averaging about $500 million of outflow a day. But if you look at this last week, Friday was $51 million, Thursday was $100 million, $80 million, $72 million. This has dwindled to a very small, manageable amount. And what's happening is all of a sudden now you're seeing big inflows into the ETFs because we don't have this gigantic drain from the Grayscale Trust. Now, not every single day is going to be an all-time record. Some days will be better than others. Some weeks will be better than others. But I would say the inflows are going to drastically outweigh the outflows. If you look at the market caps of these ETFs as of Friday, you're going to see BlackRock's ETF is now over $4 billion. Fidelity's is about $3.5 billion. ARK Invest on Friday went over $1 billion. And Bitwise looks like they're just a few days away at $857 million. They're just a few days away from going over $1 billion. So just those four put together are the better part of $10 billion of inflows. And we are only not even 1 month into these ETFs. So I had said initially, I think $100 billion is going to flow into these ETFs in the first 12 months. That will put the Bitcoin ETFs in total larger than the gold ETF. I think it's going to have a dramatic effect on Bitcoin and the price of Bitcoin. And I think it's going to allow this cycle to maybe have Bitcoin hit a higher number than a lot of people are anticipating. One of the going belief systems is that each halving, the top is getting less and less versus the previous halvings. In other words, it's still increasing, but at a decreasing rate. I think there's there's every chance this cycle could maybe even be better than the last cycle. So the 2016 cycle got to about 20,000 in 2017, and then we got to about 69,000 in the next cycle. So that's about a 3.5x. Now, I don't know that we're going to do that, but I do think there is a chance we may do a lot better than people are expecting. And these spot ETFs, like I said, they've only just begun. This is going to put demand pressure on Bitcoin, really, I think, for the entire bull cycle and potentially even beyond. So I don't want to be too overly optimistic, and I do want to point out, as I say all of this, if we take a look at the Bitcoin charts, 20% pullbacks for Bitcoin are very common. We had 20% pullbacks in the year 2023, even though in the year in total, Bitcoin was up 150%. So even inside of that big bull market, there were 3 corrections. Well, already recently, you'll see from January 11th to January 23rd, so that's just 11 days, we did have a 21% pullback. So we've already had one of those in the year 2024. So this is a part of what I'm talking about. Although I'm very bullish and I think there's big numbers ahead for Bitcoin, I do think there will always be buying opportunities. Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is extremely volatile. These are volatile assets. So pullbacks are a part of the process. So I always just like to caution everybody about the volatility involved in these and to not get too excited in either direction because we do see big swings. The last thing you'll notice looking at the Bitcoin one-day chart is that there's a green line here at around $48,240. This goes back 2 years. Bitcoin peaked in 2022 on March 28th at this green line. That's almost 2 full years ago. This is the first time we've retested that line in the last 2 years. This was on January 11th. So you can see we candle wicked above it, but closed well below. We have now candle wicked above that as I'm making this video on Sunday today. So this is going to be an important test. We're going to see what happens over the next days and weeks. If we can break out of this to the upside, I do think there's an awful lot of room left to run even between now and the halving. So we're going to see. I think the next move Bitcoin makes is going to depend on whether we get rejected at this line of resistance or if we're able to break through. So that's the number one thing I'll be keeping my eye on over really the course of the next 1 week. So that's it. That's everything. That's what I got for you on all things Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners over the course of the last week. Hopefully you guys had a great week. Thanks so much for watching. Remember to smash the like button. And again, if you have not yet subscribed, we're shooting for 20,000 subscribers. So if you enjoy this content, if you enjoy Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners, please consider subscribing. Thanks so much, and we will see you in the next video.